When you look at the 2016 Democratic field, is there room to the left of Secretary Clinton?
I think there is a lot of room for a Democrat to speak to these issues. I think it could well be Secretary Clinton. But one way or another, the Democrats have to speak to these issues.
What is your level of confidence that she will occupy that space?
I'm hopeful. Look, I think she should. I think it's necessary. I think a lot about her history and origins suggests it's natural for her. If you go back to the work she did originally, it gets to these same issues, what she did with the Children's Defense Fund, what she did on family and medical leave, what she did on healthcare reform. And we all remember 1993, where it was a huge and risky thing to take on the issue that really got to the core economic reality of our people. So I think there's a pretty substantial body of evidence. And I think what I saw when I had the honor of helping her out in 2008 in every way I could, and I was out in Ohio in March of 2008, and I think she was speaking to these core economic issues very powerfully.
Last one on this, why hasn't she been in that space, or why hasn't she been identified with that space, or why hasn't she been emphasizing those issues?
Of course you have to ask her, but I would say that there has been an evolution over these last years since the economic crisis. And I think this is sort of the issue that goes under-discussed. The economic crisis changed our politics. But because we've only really talked about it in the context of the 2012 presidential election, I mean, it was happening as the 2008 election happened, so we talked about it in the context of the 2012 election. It got minimized down to two candidates as opposed to a bigger analysis of what happened. I think our politics changed not quite as much as the politics of the nation changed in 1932 with the Great Depression, but they changed. During a lot of that time, Secretary Clinton was Secretary Clinton, obviously not in the political environment. So I don't think we've had an opportunity to hear her in this new reality.
Have you talked to her about this?
Not in any detail, but the point to me, I would be honored to. I'd be honored to talk to any and all Democrats around the country on this point, because I think it's where we have to go. But the point I was going to say is, when you have that big a shock to the system, the foreclosures, the sense that came from real experience of the kind of freezing of the middle class, and obviously the reality of declining real wages. And the income inequality crisis gets that sharp, but it doesn't spark a national discussion. Because really, if I said to you, okay, show me where that nexus of the income inequality debate is in our national discussion. Where was it in the 2014 election, or even in the 2012 election, again, aside from the two presidential candidates? Where is it in the piece of legislation that's being, well, we're talking about Keystone, or we're talking about nominees for different offices, or we're talking about immigration reform, all very important issues. Where's the income inequality debate in this country? Since it's non-existent, it's one hand clapping, meaning the side that loses, both morally and politically, when we're not talking about income inequality, is the Democrats.
As you say, you saw Secretary Clinton's 2008 campaign up close. What needs to be different about a new Clinton campaign?
Look, I don't want to talk about someone who is not a declared candidate. I try to be very careful about that in general. So let me just speak generically, not about any one candidate.
In the off chance that Secretary Clinton should run.
There you go. What should the Democrat do? The Democrats should speak to income inequality. The Democrats should be willing to challenge the status quo, should be willing to challenge wealthy and powerful interests, and should marry that with a grassroots organizing strategy that epitomizes the message. And this is something, again, we learned. I think it's an important point. We learned this last year. Of course, again, with ever more expensive campaigns, what does that mean? More media-centric campaigns. Those vastly expensive campaigns are not for more field troops, for more canvassers. We all know this. It's for more airtime. That works on one level. It fails on another level because TV ads can't motivate people to vote. They may be good at getting people to stay home, which I think the conservatives have been very good at recognizing. But motivating people to vote is a much more local and grassroots endeavor. So I think it's one, the message, most importantly the message, the ideas, two, taking that message truly to the grassroots on a consistent basis.
Two questions about politics and then a question about parenthood. What do you think of Elizabeth Warren?
I think she's saying some very important things. I think she's one of the really indispensable voices in our national debate.
Do you think she would be a good presidential candidate?
Again, I don't want to conjecture about candidates because
What
I have
do
no indication she's interested in that job.
What do you think of Rand Paul?
I think Rand Paul, although I could not disagree with him more on a host of issues, I do think he evinces a certain authenticity that any good Democrat should worry about. I thought when, for example, speaking up on the drone issue, regardless of what you think about what he said, there was a willingness to risk there, and it seemed to connect to an actual, real ideology.